Welcome to Engagement Fundraising, where you'll learn how busy fundraisers like you are generating more major and planned gifts at lower costs. Brought to you by iMarketSmart.com, the software and services company that helps nonprofits raise more money more efficiently.
Kelley, how do we get the Glengarry leads? Come on, give it to me.
Joining us today on Engagement Fundraising is Kelley McGeehan, Principal Consultant and owner of McGeehan Research. She is a consultant that focuses on prospect research. And in this episode, we get a chance to explore why prospect research is valuable, the consideration continuum, why some organizations fail even with the right data at the right time, and much more. You can find Kelley at www.mcgeehanresearch.com. That's McGeehan research.com. You can also listen to episode 15 of the How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy podcast for a different discussion that dives into how she built her business, as well as some more prospect research topics. Without further ado, here's our discussion with Kelley.
This is the way we should start all podcasts, is with the guest laughing hysterically because the first thing that I tell her is to herself.
Yeah.
That's the way. That doesn't happen on Jimmy Kimmel, does it?
I think he builds to that point. No.
He builds up to that. Yeah, he does that later.
He built up. It's not for network television, those statements, but as long as I can tell you to get yourself right back, then it's all good and fair.
All right. It's great.
We're rolling.
Yeah, this is Market Smart. We were throwing F-bombs all over the place. And
Yeah.
don't worry, though, Kelley, because Tim will, edit them.
Yes,
Yes.
lots of light bulbs smashing.
Because I do get comments every once in a while. People will send me a little LinkedIn message. You don't have to be so rude. And I'm like, that was the impersonation of my grandmother, by the way. So, my grandmother was from Newark, New Jersey. We're going to talk about Kelley in a second, but my dad grew up in a one-bedroom apartment in Newark, New Jersey. I don't know. That's the humongous city that you pass as you're going to New York, and you're like, oh, is that New York? No, that's Newark. It's spelled wrong. It's dirty. And so they grew up poor in a one-bedroom apartment. My grandparents slept on the pull-out couch. My dad and his little sister, they didn't share a bed, but they shared a room. There were two beds in that one room. But anyway, so she had this New Jersey hardcore accent, and she used to say things like when my dad finally had some money, and I can remember her saying, "Are we gonna go to the conjuminjum in the Mercedes-Benz?" Be like, what is this language you're speaking? What's a Mercedes-Benz? She couldn't say Mercedes-Benz. All right, anyway, forget it.
Yeah.
A Jewish grandmother. And
Sure.
She's like, I like the Mercedes-Benz drive me around. They owe us that. Jewish grandmother.
German.
Yeah, German car. Anyway,
Yeah.
Mercedes-Benz. All right, hi, Kelley.
Hi, Greg. How are you?
Welcome to the Engagement Fundraising Podcast.
Thank you. It is wonderful to be here.
You lie. Okay, Tim, you want to do your thing? What do you do? The professional thing.
I mean, you kind of did it. Well, welcome to the show, Kelley. We're excited to have you on to talk about God knows what at this point,
So who is Kelley?
Who are you, Kelley?
Who are you and why are you here?
Who am I? The great mystery. I am a prospect researcher. I have my own research consulting business. I work with a variety of nonprofits. I am based out of Baltimore, Maryland, not too far up the 95 road from you guys down in College Park.
Yes. Go Orioles! Go Ravens!
Yeah.
I actually like the Washington, D.C. teams. We're cousins, sort of Baltimore and D.C. We don't visit each other. We don't like each other, but we're cousins. Is that how it works? I don't know.
Having lived in the D.C. area for many years and actually also an alum of College Park.
Yes.
When I moved to Baltimore, yes, go Terps. It was like moving in with the stepchild. Baltimore's really like the dastardly stepchild to D.C., at least, when I was living down there.
And for people that want to learn more about Kelley, I did a one-on-one interview with her for the How I Built My Fundraising Consultancy podcast. That's episode 15 for those that are interested. So, yeah, check it out.
Thank you. It was fun.
Here's why I love Kelley, right? I've never met you face to face, but I love you because You fill a void that I hope people will take advantage of, because not everybody can afford a prospect researcher. And if you hire a full-time prospect researcher, they might not actually be as good as they say they are or their resume is. And it could be really smart to just dip your toe in, and you may keep that toe in there with someone like Kelley, a prospect researcher who's super expert and super experienced.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What I refer to the work that I do is research on demand, because you're absolutely right. There are so many organizations who do not have the capacity, whether it's financial or the workflow, to necessitate a full-time researcher. And when you bring somebody on staff, not only do you have the salary and the benefits and all the costs associated with hiring the person, but then you have to pay for all the subscription services that the researcher needs. And the costs just escalate. And then you have the time constraints, because as we bring on staff, as I'm sure you see within your own workplace, there are those staff meetings and the continuing ed and all of the time sucks, the water cooler conversations and everything that pulls away from the time that the person can actually be researching. And so it really limits their, no matter how good they are or how experienced, it limits the viability of how much they can actually produce. So what I do is I come on board, and when organizations need help, when they need research at a variety of levels, I will come in, produce it, send it off, and then they've got what they need. And oftentimes, what I have seen over the last 7 years since I've had my business is that organizations who engage with me and have an ongoing relationship, their level of interest in research increases over time, and then they end up replacing me, which I think is a winning proposition. Truthfully, they will bring on a full-time researcher. And then what I see is that their interest in having that continuing level of research continues to grow. So then I come back and I support the research staff and help supplement what they're doing. So the evolution of the research needs is just fun and fantastic as the organizations grow and just see the benefits of it.
So why do people need research?
For a variety of reasons.
Totally loaded question. I mean, we know that data drives results. I get it. And so I'm playing dumb here. I love the fact that organizations try to research who they're targeting. I hate the word targeting, but who they're contemplating building a relationship, a deeper relationship with, because that yields efficiency and helps build on the mission, so that you're not spending so much money spamming everybody. You're kind of trying to find that 80-20 or 90-10. As a donor, I appreciate that they do that, because that's efficient and that drives down costs.
Exactly. So you just answered your own question. So
well, I do that. You know what? Sometimes we don't need guests. I'll just talk. In fact, goodbye.
I feel a little superfluous here. So no, I mean, I absolutely agree. So what you get with the research, I mean, you go back old school and you've got the peer reviews with the volunteers. You've got the gift officers who are going out and meeting with folks, but really to drive efficiencies, you want to zero your time in on the individuals who are going to be the right fit, because you want to be respectful of the donor's time, as well as being as efficient as possible with the staff time to have that meeting of the highest return on investment of the staffing so that you can support the programs. The research is important because we want to find out the facts to help have a respectful conversation with those prospective donors. We want to make sure that the conversation can be focused and be geared towards their interest areas and where the programmatic work of the organization and the interest areas of the donors converge, as well as right sizing the ask to make sure that, again, being respectful of the donor. It's really an important component. It also, by creating a foundation of research for the gift officers to go out and have those discovery visits, it allows the gift officers to go in and really feel more confident in their approach and make sure that they are having the best conversation possible.
Mm-hmm. They want to have meaningful meetings so that they are optimizing their time and being efficient and also being respectful and helping the donor along in their consideration process. It's a two-way street. Win-win.
Yes.
Okay, so you support that. I get it. And let me lay down some golf balls here. I like to say that. I always talk about flying golf balls.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we have a problem, I suck at golf. Someday I'll play and then a lot, and then I'll still suck. But hitting flying golf balls, everybody knows that's really hard. And laying down golf balls makes it a little easier. So I just want to lay down a couple things here. Is in the process, you've got identification, qualification, maybe cultivation, solicitation, negotiation, and then stewardship. What do you think? Anything missing there?
No, that's the basic continuum for the solicitation cycle.
So this was always thought in the past quite a linear process. Now, thanks to technology, it's becoming a bit messier. This is what Claire Axelrad, I think she calls it a vortex, where people can come in, and especially the donors, of course, they come in and out of the process. Like, you may not get all the information from the donor that you want on the first discovery visit, but you might get it on the third when you see them at the gala or something, right? So
Right.
It's what we call is in my book, progressive profiling. You're progressively profiling. It's not just like, okay, we're doing the prospect identification stage here, and then you go solicit here. What do you think, Kelley? What do you think?
What do I think? I agree. Nothing happens in a vacuum. There are so many dynamic aspects to the donor's lives, to the organization's life. And so to think of the solicitation continuum in a linear framework, you're looking at it in a vacuum, and that's not reality. The reality is you have a prospective donor who has been identified, and then you start qualifying them. Well, they're going to have a life event that might take them off of that path. They might have a life event that would accelerate their path. There's going to be a lot of back and forth. There's also the reality of the organization is going to have funding needs that pop up that are going to change the route. They're going to have funding needs that drop off the table because of budgeting concerns, because of programmatic concerns, you name it. That's going to cause things to alter and change. I completely agree that it is not as clear cut because we live in real time, real life. We don't live in vacuums. We don't work in vacuums. We don't operate in vacuums.
Sure. And also other ingredients that'll change that is whether or not you're in a campaign.
Yep.
There's some urgency, maybe some kind of cataclysmic event occurred. There was a fire in the building. We need to rebuild. There's all kinds of issues with that. So tell me how that works then with the major gift or legacy gift team. In a perfect world, it would be linear.
Right.
But it's not.
Correct. There has to be a partnership between the researchers and the frontline fundraisers. Typically, what we have seen in the past is the frontline fundraisers are really the outgoing, driving the process personalities. They are the ones coming to the researchers and saying, please react to this request. Please provide me information on these individuals that have been identified either by myself, by peers, through the campaign process, feasibility studies, et cetera, where more and more the researchers are doing proactive research and bringing the names. And there needs to be a lot of back and forth conversation. When the researcher finds the information, presents it to the gift officer goes out and has the meeting. Ideally, they're coming back to the researcher. There needs to be information flowing in both directions and a strong partnership to be the most effective and to be the most efficient. And you hit on early in this conversation, a key phrase that is near and dear to my heart is efficiency. And to increase the efficiency, which is going to increase the effectiveness and increase the revenue for the organization to allow them to provide bigger, better work, there needs to be that level of efficiency.
So in this love fest between the prospect researchers and the, right? Well, let me tell you about the love set. Here's the thing, okay? So everybody knows, hopefully everybody, because everybody listens to this with bated breath, the podcast, right? But,
naturally, yeah.
They wait for them to be released every week,
exactly.
Right?
They're just sitting at their phone. They keep tapping it. Is there another podcast from Greg and Market Smart? I come at this from the sales perspective. I was a marketer for a long time, a salesman since I was like 12, right? And then I started the company to generate leads, highly qualified leads for salespeople in the private sector. And then fell into this because I realized, hold on, like major gifts and legacy gifts, they need leads too, highly qualified leads. They want to be the best fundraiser they can be by getting into the living room or the coffee shop or whatever with someone who wants to be with them. You can do that, then the likelihood of getting that gift or previously closing the sale goes up exponentially. So that's my world. Then I look at it as when I was helping the CEOs of these companies generate leads for their salespeople, and we generate tons of great leads. And then the salespeople always say, yeah, those leads are no good. No good at all. I can just imagine that it happens in prospect research. You thoroughly research it. You look at their transactional history, this, that, the other thing. The gift officer makes the call, as Jerry Panis, who I don't know, but I love him because he writes all these books, and he says getting the appointment is 85% of getting the gift.
Yeah.
And it's harder to get an appointment than to actually close a gift. So how do you get them the Glenn Gary leads? Talking Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, if anybody's ever seen that.
It's been a while.
You're aging yourself.
Who is that guy?
Yourself.
He's on Saturday Night Live doing Donald Trump now. What's that guy's name?
Alec Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin,
Yeah.
right? Wasn't that his first movie? It was colossal. It was awesome. Probably the best role he ever did. They friggin' broke into the office, the sales manager's office, because they believed that the sales manager was giving leads to the Glenn Gary or something that were better. And that's why they sucked, because they didn't get the Glenn Gary leads. They want the Glenn Gary leads. Kelley, how do we get the Glenn Gary leads? Come on, give it to me.
Okay. It's
pressure.
Twofold. No pressure whatsoever. I'm going to give away all of my secrets if I tell you all of the details, and then I'll be out of business.
And then you'll have to shoot me.
No, you'll just have to send all of my kids to college. So, it's no pressure there.
All right. Well, give it to me anyway.
It's a combination of factors. One, the researchers have to be using good data. It is data from outside sources. It is using Market Smart data with the surveys. It is looking at it and analyzing the data and getting rid of all of the false positives that pop up. So that is one level. There's also an onus on the gift officers. I mean, let's be real. Picking up that phone and making an ask, there are so many opportunities to say, that's not going to be a good call. There's so many opportunities to say, this is difficult getting through. It requires the gift officers, and I'm saying this as a former gift officer. I took the reverse route of most people in the profession. I was a frontline gift officer, and then I started my research business. There is that level of fear. And I'm just going to throw it out there. People are fearful of being told no.
Of course.
People are fearful of being told, no, I don't want that appointment. So if we can have the researchers provide good, accurate information to the gift officers, and the gift officers feel confident and help them get over that fear, that big F word, not the F bomb, but the F word, then there's going to be more success.
This episode is brought to you by us here at MarketSmart. Learn about the Fundraising Report Card in this quick break. What is the Fundraising Report Card? Well, it's a free service offered at fundraisingreportcard.com. This service enhances your fundraising efforts with easy-to-use analytics and charts. You'll get your proposal approved faster by using these beautiful and elegant charts created automatically with fundraisingreportcard.com. You'll also find a great blog over at fundraisingreportcard.com that dives deep into what data means for your organization and how you can use it effectively to make smart fundraising decisions. Start learning and start generating beautiful charts by going to fundraisingreportcard.com. Now, back to the episode.
Failure to make calls The more calls you make, and if you're calling the right people, the more likelihood you're going to get the meeting. Of course, you've got to say the right things, and that's where prospect research comes out, because then you can tilt the conversation. Mrs. Walker, it's so wonderful that you attended the homecoming reunion last March. I was wondering, did you have a good time? Did you meet up with anybody in particular? Do you think that we could have done anything better? You know what I mean? So with the prospect researcher, hopefully would find out those kernels of information that can really create a meaningful conversation.
Exactly. And help the gift officer to make the foray into making the connections.
There's an elephant in this room, okay? I'll fall on my sword. We haven't been very successful of getting the attention of prospect researchers. The wealth screening companies do great with selling to prospect researchers. We don't really sell prospect researchers. We generally talk to the chief development officers, the leadership, even board members. It's funny, board members, when they see what we do, they fund it. You know, they're like, okay, I'm all in. And then there's the gift officers, of course, because what we aim to do is help them become the best version of themselves. We help them be the fundraiser that they always wanted to be, and we help them avoid getting that rejection, because we show them not only people who are highly likely to accept and have that meaningful meeting. The recency factor of engagement, we have found, can increase the likelihood that they'll accept the call and have a meaningful conversation by as much as 700%. So in other words, if they're clicking online right now, then that means, you know, maybe they watched a video, now they're passionate, blah, blah, blah. What's with this elephant? Like, how come prospect researchers, how come we don't do very well? How come they don't see the value? Go ahead, punch me, hit me, make me bleed.
No, I might set you on fire. I won't make you bleed. It's tough, because what I see as the prospect researcher's role is the chef. Do you like to cook?
No.
Okay. Oh, then this.
But I don't even like to eat, actually. I find it to be a terrible waste of time. But I know that people do, and most of humanity enjoys that sort of thing. So continue.
Okay. I love to cook. I love to create things. I love to just pull things out of my cabinets and out of my refrigerator and just create a new compilation of flavors. The researcher is like that chef in the kitchen. And what we have, and what the researchers need to be educated on, is there is a place for the market smart information. What you're doing is you're extracting that data from the donors. They're clicking through the survey. They are providing their own personal information and their own identifiers. The researchers are going to outside sources and getting third-party data on these individuals. Neither one can live in a vacuum and be perfect in and of themselves. Sorry to say that about Market Smart.
No, but that's okay. We agree.
It all needs to work together. Oftentimes, researchers can feel overwhelmed with the amount of data that they would need to go through, i.e. using the Market Smart data internal from the personal perspective of the donors, as well as the external, trying to figure out how to make it all marry together. And also, again, getting back to that fear word, the fear of, will the Market Smart data be seen as a potential replacement for the work that they're pulling in externally? And I would like to say that it's not a replacement. It needs to be joined and married and really added to that pot that the researcher is managing. And they're bringing in the external data, all of those factual, hardcore numbers. Market Smart is bringing in that very subjective, very important data. The researcher marries it all together, stirs it up, lets it simmer a little bit, and has it pull together this flavorful dish that is then given to the gift officer to consume, so that they can go out and actually have the conversation with that donor.
Got it. And you know what? I know one instance where, and this person isn't like, her title is not prospect researcher. Her role is one that she does a lot of that prospect research kind of stuff in support of the major gift officers at a particular organization. And she actually noticed from looking in the dashboard that something, it was like 137 people said from the donor survey that they would be interested in giving real estate. right?
Wow.
Which is a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's cool about that is that she came forward to us and she said, well, hold on, what if we were to do just a mini little marketing effort? It's mini because it's 137 letters, emails, and phone calls, but it's huge when you think about the return. If we could just get 1, 2, 5 people to respond and engage, maybe even more. So what I'm saying is she came forward and said, hold on, there's 137 people here, because she went into the dashboard and just looked. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm embarrassed because we didn't look. The gift officers are embarrassed because they didn't look. But who was it? It was this person who was fulfilling that prospect research role, who then kind of plays the orchestra conductor, if you will, and said, hold on here. We can make this music sound much better if we just do this. Maybe I should tell that story more.
You should tell that story more. And that's an excellent example. And that is where the researcher, whatever the researcher's title technically is in the driving role. They're analyzing the information. She is not simply reacting. She is going in and investigating, creating this pool and bringing it forward and saying, yes, this is a winning proposition. And that is where the gift officers and the researchers need to be able to work together and hear each other from their various perspectives as far as what makes a good pool of candidates, because you do need to have that subset of your database to be able to reach out to then filter out those who are going to be in a position to make that type of gift in the near, middle, and long term. And it's constantly feeding, again, not to use these terms, but to constantly feeding that pipeline for the gift officer. So there's revenue coming into the organization on a continual basis, and to constantly keep growing that revenue stream.
Okay, cool. So check this out. So we're going to wrap up this whole conversation in a bow. We're going to really drive something home here, because you just mentioned talking about, filling up the pipeline to drive revenue, right? But in the middle of that, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens, and I'm trying to change the conversation so that people start looking at metrics that I think matter. I was talking to senior leadership at a college and university, and this guy was trying to pummel me, what's the ROI on using this, and I was like, well, I'll help you calculate it. So how many dials does a gift officer make in a month? And how many connections? What's your dial to connection percentage ratio? And then what's your dial to meaningful meetings or meaningful conversations ratio? And he's like, oh my God, I don't know that. And I'm like, well, I can't figure out your ROI. We got to figure this out. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, in the middle of prospect research, you got to get the meeting. So nobody's really keeping track of these metrics. I aim to. Has anybody in your vast experience looked at that and said, well, okay, here's the prospect researcher. We had a poorly populated portfolio. So is anyone looking at these conversion metrics, dials to connections, dials to meaningful meetings? What do you think?
Absolutely. I've worked with organizations that do look at the types of connections, whether it is the emails, the phone calls, all of the different forms of communication. And they are looking and analyzing and saying, the size of the portfolio as compared to how many calls are being made, as compared to how many meetings are being committed to, and how many gifts are being generated. It is a system that you are going to see in a larger organization where they are going to have the capacity to really dig down and analyze that data. Most smaller organizations just aren't going to have the bandwidth in order to do it. But I agree. Again, it gets back to that efficiency and trying to manage expectations and manage the process. And you and I have talked about this at length in other conversations. I agree with you. Many of the terms that I've been using today dehumanizes the process, because we are not looking at, the dials to dollars and the pipelines. We're talking about real live people giving away their hard-earned money to organizations and causes that they believe strongly in. And we need to keep reminding ourselves of that. But in order to be efficient, we also need to look at the systematic approach. Using the products, taking that artificial intelligence, as we've talked, and maximizing the efforts of the information and the researchers to zero in, to allow the gift officers to identify the donors that are the most in line with the organization is going to create greater efficiencies.
Holy cow, that was brilliant. And you know what I really love is when you're talking about dehumanizing the process. So I want to lay down this marker, and we're going to wrap this up, is that is one of my biggest pet peeves of the whole sector. You know, it's studied back in the 50s and 60s by Gabriel Marcel. He coined the phrase, the spirit of abstraction. You might, he came up with the spirit of abstraction in like wondering about how societies can possibly go to war with one another. You know, like if they ever just sat down and looked each other in the eye, I mean, surely if they had coffee, they could work it out. But no, with the spirit of abstraction, we find ways to do things that we really shouldn't do. And when you're behind a computer and you're hunting and searching and Googling and, you know, or you're behind that email button, I call it the spam button, you know, and the marketer never has to meet any of these donors that they're going to shower with their junk mail.
Right.
They create the spirit of abstraction and then things go off the rails. So I'm glad you brought that up, because if you didn't, I'd make you bring it up. How about that? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So what have we learned?
Yeah.
Let's review. Kelley, what would you like people to take away? Number one, that here, I'll put words in your mouth. Yeah, you just be quiet.
I was going to say, I have a feeling I don't even need to utter a word here.
Well, welcome to my world, okay? So you know, all I was going to say is that number one is that Terps, if you're a University of Maryland graduate, you're probably really, really smart, right?
Of course.
Of course.
Of course.
Of course. It's a turtle. We have a turtle for a mascot.
Aw.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
But what have we learned? We've learned quite a bit.
I believe strongly that the researcher is vital to the organization's foundation of building that pipeline. The research that is internal, that is provided by the donors, like through the MarketSmart surveys, is key to being married with the external data that the researcher pulls in. They need to marry it together, and that they need to work effectively as a team with the frontline gift officers. And there needs to be information flowing both directions to be the most effective and efficient.
Hallelujah. I agree.
Oh, thank God.
So Kelley, thank you. Thank you so much to give us the prospect research perspective. And Tim, thank you for letting me suck all the oxygen out of this room and not saying much of anything.
Sure.
Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm good.
Good.
You're
well,
not willing to go out on that plank, Tim? And
sometimes he does, you know, but not today.
Not today, no.
Kelley?
Well, thank
pleasure.
you. It was my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity, and I love the verbal sparring with you. So it's fantastic.
Superb. Enjoyed it with you too. Have a nice day. Cheerio.
Thank you. You too.
All right, bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks again to Kelley McGeehan for her time. You can find her company at McGeehanResearch.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Engage in Fundraising. If you like the show, make sure to review it on iTunes and pass it along to a colleague. If you're curious about what we do, check out iMarketSmart.com, and don't forget to try out Fundraising Report Card at www.fundraisingreportcard.com. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Engage in Fundraising.